In this lesson, we will add IKTarget controls. We've already learned how to create an IKTarget. Let's go ahead and do that for our left palm. With that selected, we can head over to our motion panel, and right at the top, we'll create one. Now, what about elbow control? As of right now, in order to control the elbow, we need to rotate the upper arm. And that's not ideal, because what if we wanted the elbow to be locked down during our animation? Well, in that case, we'd need an up node for the elbow to point at. So in order to create this, it's just a matter of grabbing one of the bones of our chain. I'll go ahead and grab the forearm bone. Then we can head over to our modify panel, and right at the top underneath our limb setup rollout, we'll find our up vector option. Let's go ahead and choose use up vector, and now you can see that an extra node has been added. Alright, so as we start to move this object, you can see that we are now given full control over the elbow's orientation, which is really neat. And then feel free to redesign this if you'd like. You can go ahead and work with platform or add an editable spline and shape it further. There's our control. Okay, great. So, if we wanted to now mirror this, we most certainly can. I'll go ahead and grab the clavicle, copy all of these settings, grab the right clavicle and paste. You can see that everything has mirrored over seamlessly. So this is really exciting. Great stuff. And then when we get into match IK and FK, when we start to use that system, we'll learn that, I mean, it just works. You know, everything lines up properly, and we get this very seamless blend between the two modes that I really enjoy. All right, great. Well, we don't want to forget about the knees. We need up vector nodes for them also. So I'll again go in and grab the shin bones to apply this. And I'm grabbing these objects because we've added an editable poly, of course, to the bones above, the thigh or our upper arm. So it's a lot easier to create this node if we go ahead and select an object that doesn't have that extra modifier applied to it. I would also like to point out that for these objects, you can go in and use freeze transforms during animation. So once you're in animation mode, you can go ahead and use that tool, and we access that by alt-right-clicking and using freeze transforms here. If you'd like to learn more about how you can use that when rigging, feel free to take a look at our facial rigging course, as well as rigging quadrupeds in Max. Those are just a few that we use that tool in, but you're always going to want to use that. Cat is really the only exception, but even then, there are nodes that we can add that to, and I'll show you that. Let's head over to our motion panel, and I'm going to go ahead and create an absolute layer. Now keep in mind that because we've made these changes, the feet will be offset again, and we'll need to fix them. But once we're completely finished with our rig, and we're just about there, really after this step, the rig is finished. But once we have gotten to that step, then we don't have to worry about zeroing out the feet. I mean, it's already over and done with. That's when we start to add more and more to our rig that we'll need to possibly make that change to fix their orientation when we're ready to animate. But I'll go ahead and just scroll down here, and I'll go ahead and head over to animation mode. Just to show you this, we can now go in, grab our IKTarget. Okay, so if we were to go back to its static pose, I'll right click and use freeze transforms. Click yes. Now as we start to animate this object, if we ever need to get back to our static pose, we can go ahead and alt right click and choose transform to 0. Or another way, if I were to go ahead and undo before we used freeze transforms, could always create a new absolute layer. So I'll go in and create a new one. And then we can go in and name the top one here, let's say skin pose or something along those lines. Then we have the animation layer here that we'd use for animation. But that's not too necessary because we have setup pose, but you have that option if you'd like. Of course, we have this additive change to the feet, but once the feet have been reoriented and once that has been saved, these things will not happen, so that's nothing to be concerned with. But I will go in and remove the animation layer here. And for this one, you may want to rename it back to animation layer or whatever would pertain to the animation you are about to work on. And then at that point, again, making sure that you're in animation mode, you just go in and zero out all of those values of your ankle. So I'll go ahead and make sure that's done in between lessons. Now another option I'd like to point out to you is what's known as apply transforms. This is basically a way of grabbing all bones that don't necessarily have parents and making sure that they still follow their controls. Alright, so you'll find this on bones like the pelvis and also our IKTargets. Though they're not bones, they still fall into that rig category, and you'll find that that option is applied on them as well. We find it underneath our hierarchy panel, underneath link info, and right underneath our bone hierarchy rollout. So you can see it's applied here and also on our pelvis. However, if we go to any child bones, it's not needed because they're already driven by an object that is being driven by one of these objects that do have apply transforms enabled. Alright, so for child bones, it's nothing to worry about, but for the objects that don't necessarily have parents, we want to use those use this option just to make sure that the control will always influence the bone that we intend it to. Alright, so with that said, guess what? Our rig is basically finished. So what do we have left to do? Well, we'll get into skinning. So we'll learn how to skin and just how to stay organized so we are ready to skin and we can have a very fast skinning process because of taking that step. And then afterwards, I'll show you how to save out your rig as a preset. So if you ever need to create the same rig, we can do it easily by just simply clicking in our scene, and Max will go in and generate that same rig for us, which can save us plenty of time. Not only that, I'll introduce you to a really neat feature called Add Rigging, which can be used to save accessories and also skinned objects so that they are also saved in our rig preset. So we have a few exciting topics to cover, and once we're done with that, we can get into animation, and then finally we will end with muscle. So just a few more topics and we'll be good to go in this course.